channels of personal and business bankruptcies, interest on the national debt taking up 8% of the federal budget, our industrial base being shipped to China, and a trade deficit at a level that history shows leads to a debased currency and a lower standard of living. To claim that the Fed Reserve helps to stabilize the U.S. economy, well, as Howard Cosell used to say on Monday Night Football, it strains the credulity of a rational man. One can only conclude that the Fed is simply incapable of achieving its stated objectives. After all, it has had 98 years to sort out any procedural problems. It's had the chance to tinker with every economic theory put out there, and 100 and some revisions to its charter. And still, they can't make it work. That leads to an obvious question. Why has the Federal Reserve failed to achieve its stated objectives? And the answer is very simple. Because those were never its real objectives. Remember, the Federal Reserve System is just a cartel with a government facade. Sure, those who run it would like to see high employment, high productivity, low inflation, and all of the other good things that the Fed was supposed to do. After all, they don't want to kill the goose that lays the golden eggs. But when there is a conflict between what is good for the public and what is good for the cartel always comes out on top. So recall those 5 real objectives of the financiers on Jekyll Island. First, to stop the growing influence of those small regional banks. Secondly, to reduce the private funding of the industrial loan market. Thirdly, to protect the bank industry from bank runs. Fourth, to shift the loan losses from banks to the taxpayers via government bailouts. And finally, to convince Congress that the scheme was a measure to protect the public. Well, they succeeded in all 5. So now we can come up with a list of reasons for abolishing the Federal Reserve. Number 1, the Fed is not capable of accomplishing its stated objectives because they are in conflict with its real objectives. Secondly, it is a cartel operating against the public interest. Thirdly, its attempts to manipulate interest rates and the money supply actually serve to destabilize the economy. Fourth, because of its ability to charge interest on money created from nothing, it is the supreme instrument of usury. Number 5, it generates our most unfair tax because the poor are least able to protect themselves from the theft of their purchasing power through monetary inflation. The Federal Reserve System needs to be abolished because it is the starting point of a process that will lead to the destruction of this country. The chain of events begins with money created from nothing by a central bank, which leads to government debt, which causes inflation, which undermines the economy, which impoverishes the people, which provides an excuse for increasing government power, which is an ongoing process that leads to a government so big that it tries to give you everything you want and take everything you have. It is worth keeping in mind what George Washington was attributed as saying. Government is not reason, it is not eloquence, it is force. Like fire, it is a dangerous servant and a fearful master. And it's also worthwhile to remember what British statesman Edmund Burke